I first learned of Andy's work again via LinkedIn and later via his YouTube videos, where he was explaining, a lot about how blockchain works, the blockchain fundamentals. So I learned a lot from Andy. And I was very, very excited when he agreed to talk to us, because he will introduce us to the blockchain philosophy. We don't need all to be super technical about blockchain, but we do need to understand what this technology does. How is it different from another database system? And also thank you, Andy, who connected us to Ben Degnan, who will actually talk to us later in the day about what blockchain does not do. So we got two speakers from IBM today, and so hopefully, Andy, we will see you in a minute. I do not see you yet. Hopefully you're coming in now. Just turning on your camera. Okay. Interesting. We're having questions for Tony on blockchain and mining. Tony just left us, but he did tell me that blockchain is just a part of the whole suite of digital technologies. And yeah, I think it was great that Tony woke us up with his high energy presentation. If anybody was in, okay. I do not see your camera, Andy, yet, and do not see your mic. All right. Yes. Okay, I'll turn myself off then.
Hi, Tanya. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Now we need to see. Yeah, now we can see your presentation.
Oh, perfect. Well,
okay, great.
Well.
Okay, so okay. I have already introduced you, Andy. So we are looking forward to hear about blockchain key concept from you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for having me today, Tanya. So my name's Andy Martin, and I'd like to have maybe 10 or 15 minutes of your time just to walk through some basic concepts behind blockchain. But before I do that, let me quickly introduce myself. Now, I have to tell you that my son on the left there has literally just started university this week. So you can see what working for IBM for the last 18 years has done to me. But I live here in the UK, and I was lucky enough to join the IBM blockchain platform business when it formed about 4 years ago. And my role was to work with networks to help them build business cases and business models for the blockchain network. And I reckon I've worked with probably about 100 networks over the last 4 years. Most of them just fleetingly, but about 20 or so I know quite well. And what I'd like to do in the next 10 or 15 minutes is just share with you some of the things that I've learned, which I hope will be helpful to you about blockchain. So how should you start to think about blockchain? Well, it's not a bad thing to go back to 1995. And this was the first implementation of the Internet, Web 1.0, which gave us an internet of information. It gave us an information superhighway. Now dial forward to 2008, 2009, and we now have a re-implementation of the internet to give us a transaction superhighway. So in the words of Ginni Rometty, blockchain will do for transactions what the World Wide Web did for information. So the problem, which we're now fixing, is how can I transfer value in a transaction from peer to peer without anybody in the middle to make sure that that value has been transferred and that there is no double spend. Now, this is hugely transformative for markets because we have decentralized power. Information is power. So there's no central party that is holding information about that whole marketplace. Now, the asset that we're trading could be a Bitcoin, or it could be something moving up or down a supply chain. So if we're going to have this transaction superhighway, what are the components that we need to make this transaction superhighway work? Well, the first thing is we're going to need to know certainty of identity. Who am I dealing with? This could be permissionless, and I'm understanding a reputation, or this could be permissioned by way of know your customer, anti-money laundering. I'm going to need to know certainty of what I'm buying, the provenance of what I'm buying. Be this a bag of cobalt, or be this a part on an aircraft engine. And I'm going to need certainty of execution. If I do this, then I will get paid. Put these three things together, and we have the basis now for a marketplace where I can trade secure in the knowledge of who I'm dealing with, secure in the knowledge of what I'm buying, and able to transfer value and ownership at the same time. Now, if I tokenize that asset, this will bring a whole load of new liquidity to the marketplace, where I can now start to clear and settle at the same time. If I use maybe a stable coin, I can start to drive new types of secondary markets, and I can fractionalize, break the primary issuance up into little bits. So this gives me far greater liquidity. But maybe it's the last box on this chart, which is the most important, which is the incentive model. So we need to design an economic incentive model where it is in everybody's participants, so all of the people in the marketplace, to collaborate, to come into agreement and consensus as to what are good transactions that can be added to this transaction superhighway. So if we look at the problem that we fixed with blockchain, we have created a distributed, shared source of the truth where everyone can go to see what's going on without the need for a new powerful central intermediary. And that's the key thing. We don't have one new powerful central intermediary. Power, information power, is distributed across the members of the network. So where are these economic incentives going to start to encourage folks to want to play on this marketplace, this new type of marketplace? Well, like any platform, blockchain's success will be dependent on network effects. That's a function of who is on the network and the volume of transactions that I can pass through the network. And the first tranche of savings are what I've called ecosystem reconciliation. You might think of this as paperless trade. So we're looking at a business-to-business process, which today is very manual, very paper-based. We're going to digitize that, remove the paper, and remove all of that reconciliation effort. For example, like a post-trade settlement, we have one place where we can go to see the transaction. We don't have to reconcile. Now, this data is actually a new asset, really, which is trusted data at the level of the market. This quality of data wasn't possible before because the market participants probably didn't want to share their data with a central intermediary to make them all powerful in the market. So we can now start to have an open marketplace where we can have buying and selling of this data to start to create new value propositions. For example, one of my favorite networks is about distributing new cars, and they are selling last mile visibility of data to drive new value propositions around insurance or around late configuration of the car. And then finally, if we digitize, tokenize rather, the asset, we're now issuing a token onto the marketplace. This is giving us a whole load of new liquidity. I'm working with one commodities marketplace where they are issuing the commodities to be sold as a token, and they then have a stable coin which can be used to buy that, which can give you great velocity in transactions. So what might this marketplace look like? Well, we're going to need to decide who we need in the marketplace. We might need the mine, we might need the smelter, we might need the bank. And then the applications or the use cases that we can run on our marketplace will be a function of who is in the room. So if we start with post-trade settlement, invoices and payments in green, we're going to need the trading house, the mine, the smelter, the bank. If we have those folks in the room, we can then start to do post-trade settlement in one place and do paperless trade. But if we add logistics and transport and ports and warehouses, we can expand out into a second use case around logistics. And what we're doing is we're starting to build an app store for the industry with each extra member type that we're adding to the network, be it the insurance provider, be it the assayer, et cetera, et cetera. We're bringing more data onto the marketplace so we can build out more apps. We're building an app store for the industry. We are re-implementing the Internet of Transactions. Now, a key thing to understand is the real value is in who is in the room and what data they bring to the marketplace to then enable us to then do this app store. So we don't want to have too many of these marketplaces for the industry. You may want to have a marketplace which is focused on particular parts of the market, maybe particular types of commodities, because the value is in who is in the room. Now, we need to recognize that right now, today, the blockchain market is really split into two. We have the public permissionless blockchains of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and we have the private permissioned blockchains of Corda, Fabric, and Quorum. Now, the problem that Bitcoin and Ethereum, for example, are trying to solve is censorship resistance. How can I create a network that no external party can take down, and therefore nobody can challenge the ownership of that asset, be it a Bitcoin or be it the deeds to my house? If we move that pattern down into blockchain for business, the problem that we're trying to solve, of course, is how do I create a shared, distributed view of the truth where everyone can go to see what's going on? But here, I need to know who I'm dealing with, know your customer, anti-money laundering, and I need privacy of transactions. I only want folks to see the other side of the transaction if they have permission to do so. Whereas in Bitcoin and Ethereum, anyone can join and everyone can see everything. So we now have, you invite members and you only get to see what you can see. But this trade-off means that these enterprise blockchains are no longer censorship resistant. They are slightly less decentralized than the public blockchains. Now, what's interesting is these two worlds are coming together. And I'm working on one commodities marketplace which actually has separate shards, separate parts of the blockchain, one part which is private and one part which is public. And we're starting to get the benefits of these two worlds coming together in one marketplace. Now, the key thing that we've changed with blockchain is decentralization of power and the fact that the data, the marketplace data, is now governed by the community rather than one central administrator. So think of blockchain as a governance technology and think of it really as a back-end technology. So the major change at the back end in the blockchain is where we keep a universal state layer of who did what and when, and who owned what and when. The user experience is not particularly changed. You may hold a key to access the blockchain in a front-end application like a wallet, but the user experience isn't particularly changed. But where we start to implement that governance model is in the smart contract. So this is where we have the rules for how value can be transferred and how these trades can start to take place. However, this governance model then needs to be extended into a membership model. So each of those companies joining the network, be it the bank, be it the miner, be it the smelter, will need to have a role, a business role. They may be a governing member, where you are setting the rules for the marketplace. You may be a tier 1 member, where perhaps you have great gravitational pull to bring transactions onto the network, and you may be participating in governance. Or you may be a tier 2 or a non-member, where you're simply informed of governance decisions or you access services. Now, what's terribly important is this governance needs to be democratic, transparent, and fair. And recognize, as we become more decentralized, you may wish to change this to make it yet more democratic. There will be equivalent IT roles. So who is going to be custodian? Who is going to hold a copy of the ledger where blocks can be created to update the ledger? Who is going to be a steward, where perhaps you can host nodes where transactions can be validated to then be presented to the custodian to create blocks, or where services can be created, such as these new innovative services, or who is merely going to access somebody else's node in order to sign transactions. So my last slide then is, well, what then are the 3 entry points for you to think about bringing blockchain into your business? Well, the first thing is you could join an existing network. And there are quite a few of these networks which are starting to be set up now. And your primary benefit here is to get those benefits of paperless trade as you optimize your business and you enjoy those ecosystem reconciliation benefits. You could, however, seek to build and maybe be a governing member as you build a network. And here you are really pivoting to becoming a platform business, because there is a new platform business model which is going to be driving the infrastructure upon which everybody else innovates. Or, and I think the most interesting role of all, is you could join an existing network, recognize that there is tremendous valuable data which is being created for the first time on this marketplace, and you could look to expand that marketplace by using that data in some new innovation. Perhaps you can add your own private data, perhaps you can add some AI, some IoT, and you can now launch a new value proposition on the marketplace. And this now may well be competing against other similar innovators on the marketplace. Tanya, that then was my last slide, so I will hand back to you. Thank you very much. Shall I stop sharing my screen?
Yeah. That's great. Thank you, Andy. There were some questions, but we'll have to run along because we're running behind the schedule, unfortunately. But I'm sure this YouTube video will be very popular and people will be returning to it to learn again about the basics. And yeah, so thank you again, Andy. And our next speaker is Stefan Grühl, who is joining us from beautiful Vienna in Austria. Again, I met Stefan via online webinar where he was presenting the blockchain that they are using in their company, where they're tracking the quality of steel. So I thought that was very special. I was also very well pleased with myself, where I could understand it in German. So Stefan will be presenting one of the great things is that they are already, this is the blockchain in operation, and he will share with us what it looks like. So I think you will have a much better understanding now of what it looks like to the user rather than just the how to say, the fundamentals, the ideas, but there it is in action. Stefan, we can see your presentation, but I do not see your camera and mic, so you need to turn that on yourself because we are not locking you out. Okay. I also will say that I've actually visited Austria not too long ago on another blockchain conference and was really surprised that Austria is such a major steel producer. You wouldn't think about it. Okay. Stefan, you need to again reshare the screen. I don't see your presentation now, but you need also to turn on your camera and your mic. Okay, while we're waiting for Stefan to sort things out, just a quick word of what's happening ahead. After Stefan, we will hear, one of the questions actually was about how can blockchain be used in remote areas, and our next speaker, Nathan Williams with MindSpider, they are developing blockchain and they are running trials in Africa. So it is possible to have blockchain systems not just in the major, centers, not only with the big companies, but also with the small operators. Gustavo, do you hear from Stefan? Any reason why we do not see him yet? Yes, and thank you. Somebody commented, thanks, Andy, for sharing your blockchain knowledge. Indeed. And I also, like I said, the YouTube videos will be available for everybody to see.